It's day 3. You hike 2 miles before light. The basin you killed in 2 years ago is dead quiet. No bugles at dawn, no movement at the meadow edge. 3 other hunters walked out of the timber at first light looking just as lost as you feel right now. Everyone in camp is saying the same thing. The elk probably moved. I don't think they probably moved. I think they just compressed. And the bull you came here for is probably within a mile of where you're standing right now. The problem isn't that the elk are gone. The problem is where you've been looking. Most elk hunters read pressure the wrong way, in my opinion. They see an empty basin, they hear nothing for 2 days, and they decide that the elk have left the area. So they spread out, they cover more ground, they call louder, they start driving to new drainages. Every one of those decisions, it can be good, but it can also create more pressure, and pressure can just push those bulls deeper into the one place that hunters refuse to walk. So most hunters spend their entire pressured hunt chasing country that the elk used 3 days ago. But the pressure creates a pattern, and once you understand what that pattern looks like on the ground and on a map before you ever leave the truck, those pressured bulls are going to become the most predictable elk that you're going to hunt all season. This episode breaks down exactly where they go, why they hold and hang out there, and how to hunt them without burning your only chance at them. So I've spent 34 years hunting and guiding western big game across high alpine basins, steep north-facing drainages, and the dark, unbroken timber that turns most elk hunters around before they're even 200 yards in because it's so rough. And I've spent 30 years as a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach, working with athletes at every level, including years competing as an elite athlete myself. Now, what all of that hunting and coaching time taught me is that pressure on an athlete or an elk doesn't just create chaos. It narrows their behavior down to survival patterns, and survival patterns are more predictable. Pressure doesn't just push elk off the mountain. It pushes them off the open, accessible parts of the mountain. Now, that's a critical distinction, right? And it changes everything about how you need to read a pressured hunt. Here's what's actually happening when the basin goes quiet on day 2. The bulls that were working multiple drainages, bugling on ridges, hitting wallows, they've traded their range for security. The herd that was spread across 4 miles of open country on opening morning is probably now compressed into one pocket, one steep, nasty, north-facing drainage with a deadfall wall at the bottom of it. Loose shale maybe on the approach from the top, and no reason for a hunter to walk into it unless they know exactly what they're looking for. And while all of that's happening, the hunters who created the pressure keep working the same kind of country. They're glassing empty meadows, they're running calls into basins the elk abandoned 48 hours ago. They're putting miles on boots in country that aren't going to produce for the rest of the season. They're covering more ground because they think the elk are maybe further away, but the elk could be a lot closer than they've been all week, and they just don't understand that. They don't understand the type of country that the elk picked once they were pressured. That's the real story of a pressured hunt. It's not that the mountains stopped holding animals, it's that the animals and the hunters are no longer in the same places, and most hunters never figure out how to close that gap. Security terrain is findable on a map before you leave camp. Bulls don't just scatter randomly when the pressure hits. They move to terrain that keeps them alive, and that terrain has consistent characteristics you can identify before you take a single step. And this is true for early season bulls that are running alone or in bachelor groups, or for herds, right? Elk or elk. Now you're looking for steep, north-facing slopes with dark, unbroken timber, canopy that's so thick that it blocks a lot of direct light at 10 in the morning, natural access barriers like cliff edges above or creek cuts at the bottom, loose shale on the entry routes, blowdown walls that turn a lot of guys around, right, as soon as they see those. If the terrain looks brutal on a topo map and hasn't been verified as a travel corridor, that's probably where you should be starting. Spend 20 minutes on your mapping app the night before a tough day. Find 2 or 3 spots in the unit that match that profile, places with difficult access that haven't seen a boot since opening weekend. Those are your targets for tomorrow morning. You're not guessing, you're hunting a specific terrain type that security cover always follows. The harder it is to walk in, the better the odds that something is living in there. But here's what the map isn't going to show you, and it matters just as much. Some pressured bulls don't go deep at all. They hold in overlooked pockets that are close to access. Could be a strip of dark timber 200 yards off a busy trailhead, or a creek bottom 300 feet below a ridge that's getting hammered every morning. Hunters walk right past those spots every single day because the assumption is always that pressured elk went deep. But smart bulls know that hunters rush past a lot of that close cover to reach the backcountry. So those pockets produce punch tags every year because hunters never stop to look in them. Now, here's the thing about this. I prefer to hunt elk that actually act like elk, so I tend to go a little bit further. Just realize that a lot of those pressured elk that are going to hold in those closer places, they might not be talking elk anymore, right? They are going to be acting pressured, and so we have to adjust our tactics within that. I've got other videos on those types of tactics, hunting those pressured bulls. That's not exactly what this is about. This is more about finding those elk and not just assuming that they went deeper, right? So don't assume that distance means safety. It doesn't all the time. Security means terrain, and some of that terrain sits 10 minutes from where you actually parked. When you're glassing for these close-in pockets, try to look for dark strips that break the pattern of the surrounding terrain. Timber that's noticeably thicker than what's around it. A draw that drops sharply below a well-used trail. A north-facing bench that doesn't show up on the standard e-scouting layer because it's too small to really register as a feature. Those could be spots that a lot of hunters blow right past, and they're also the spots where year after year somebody kills a bull the day before the season ends because they finally decided to go in there. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory. It's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. There's one more thing worth noting here. Bulls reuse the same security cover year after year. They've adapted to it. They've evolved. They've figured those things out. Same pressure, same escape route, same pockets. If you find where a pressured bull held this season, mark it on your maps, right? He might be there or within a few hundred yards of that spot next September, especially if it's early on, right? And he's just holding by himself. The terrain doesn't change, so that's an indicator for you. The behavior doesn't change. They're always going to prioritize security. And a security location that held one bull could hold another bull, right? Because they like the same stuff. And the hunter who knows that is going to own a consistent advantage that nobody else at the trailhead has. Now, another aspect that I want to address, because I think this probably happens more than anything else that we've talked about in this video, when a hunt goes quiet and the days start stacking up, the instinct is often to call more in September, right? Bugles into dead timber, cow calls every 5 minutes, hoping something responds. Location bugles off of every part of a ridge at basins that may not have had an elk in it since day one, right? Because the pressure pushed them off. It can feel like you're doing something, but I feel like that is the exact wrong way to approach this. By the time pressure has pushed bulls into security cover, those animals have already been educated. They are not the talking elk that we all love to hunt fun anymore, right? They are not just going to act like those unpressured elk. They're pressured elk, so you have to hunt them like a pressured elk. Most bulls that respond aggressively to a call once or twice, once they've been blown out, they're going to start associating that with danger in daylight, right? After that, your bugler cow call isn't pulling anything in, it's just a location broadcast you're handing to a bull that already doesn't trust what he's hearing. You're not calling elk, you're teaching them even more where you are, where that pressure is at. So every call on a pressured, educated bull in security cover makes the next encounter more hard, more difficult, right? This holds up in research. Hunting activity and hunter access suppress elk vocalizations more than natural predators do. Listen to that again. These bulls aren't quiet because the rut slowed down. They're quiet because calling and hunter pressure got them in trouble and they stopped doing it. The minute you run a bugle into that drainage, if it's pressured, you've confirmed everything that bull is already suspected, and he's just more nervous, right? They might be talking at night, but good luck in the daytime in those pressured areas during anything but the very peak of the rut when they're breeding. Now, the right response here is silence, right? Silence, silence, stop calling, go slower, glass harder, use different tactics, become a ninja. That takes more discipline than just running a call randomly, right? But it's the only approach that really matches what's happening on the mountain, and matching the reality of what those elk are experiencing is the only way that you're going to hunt those pressured bulls effectively. So I would start the night before, pull up your mapping software and identify the security terrain in your unit. Mark 2 or 3 spots that fit our profile, right? Steep, maybe north facing, maybe dark canopy, difficult access, natural terrain barriers. If you're changing your approach because of pressure, make that decision with a plan, not just a gut feeling at 4 a.m. and just randomly bump into a place, right? Not just when you're in the camp chair and you're thinking about the places you could go at the last second. It's got to be done ahead of time, not under frustration. Get your eyes on the security cover before you enter it. A spotting scope from a ridge, right? Glass that timber edge, the shadows at the bench lines, any opening inside the trees where an animal might shift position mid-morning. You're looking for movement, bedded shapes, right? Anything that breaks the pattern of the timber. If you walk directly into security cover without glassing it first, you're just going to be bumping elk. So in that terrain, you've got to figure this out right ahead of time. And thermals matter more in this situation than almost any other elk hunting scenario. Pressured bulls are in tight terrain, steep drainages, dense north-facing timber, where that air movement doesn't follow the textbook a lot of times. Dark timber can reverse expected thermals regardless of time of day. Saddles can funnel and compress wind in ways that catch hunters off guard even when they think they've planned their approach correctly. The wind setup that looks clean at 9 a.m. can flip in 10 minutes when you're 200 yards from the animal, and you've got to check it constantly. Wind checker is always out when we're hunting security cover. A bull that's already been bumped once this season is going to be on high alert, and the scent absolutely ends it immediately. Now, if you do locate a bull inside a security cover, I would encourage you not to force that encounter. Try to get in position where he's probably going, right? Let him move when he decides to, not because you're trying to force your way in there. The hunter who forces a pressured bull into a bad shot angle or a blown encounter is going to lose that area for the rest of the season. Now you really have bumped him out of there, and you got to try to find the next security spot. The hunter who waits could get a nice shot on a bull that never knew he was there if you play the ninja role and not force your way in there. Now, here's the thing that a lot of elk hunters never flip around in their thinking. An unpressured bull in early September is covering serious ground a lot of times. He could be working multiple drainages, bugling on open ridges, moving through miles of country every 24 hours. Finding him means being in the right place at the right time across a huge amount of terrain. His world is wide open, and that makes him genuinely more difficult to pin down before he moves again. A pressured bull can be locked into 200 acres of dark timber. He's holding. He's not moving around the mountain anymore. He's just waiting for breeding, maybe waiting on those cows. He's in one tight pocket, and he could stay there until either the pressure changes it or it's really time to get after those cows. Think about which one is actually easier to find. For me, a lot of times, it's those pressured bulls. But most hunters spend pressured hunts frustrated at the competition. They resent the other trucks at the trailhead. They complain about them every chance they get on social media. The blown bugles at dawn from a hunter who got too excited. The camp that popped up right over the weekend, a half mile from their spot. But every hunter on the mountain creating pressure is also compressing elk. They're pushing bulls into specific identifiable terrain. Even in later season, they're doing that with the herds, right? They're doing part of your scouting without even knowing it. The more pressured a unit is, the more predictable that the elk within those locations become, if you know what pressure does to the animal. Stop asking where the elk went. Start asking what terrain type holds pressured bulls and whether you found it on your map. Answer that question before you put your boots on, and you're going to know exactly where to go before the first truck door slams at the trailhead. The mountain isn't empty. Your spot probably isn't empty. It's just more compressed. The bulls are still in the unit. Most elk hunters are just looking in the places that those animals aren't willing to go once pressure hits. Find the security terrain. Stop calling so much. Glass the nastiest country that nobody else is willing to walk into. That's where your hunt is once those elk are pressured. Now, if this episode made you realize you need a better elk plan this season, don't just watch another video and hope it all comes together. Build your plan right now. If you want to study my full system on your own, start with my elk hunting series of ebooks. If you want daily guidance, accountability, and a place to ask questions as season gets closer, join me on Team Backbone. And if you want my eyes on your actual hunt plan, your maps, your access, terrain, pressure points, wind, thermals, and your strategy, book an elk hunt plan audit with me and I'll help you tighten it up before season. If the missing piece is your body, your legs, your lungs, or your ability to handle mountain miles and a heavy pack, check out my Backbone Unlimited training plans built on my 30 years of coaching experience. And if nutrition is where you need more structure, getting leaner, fueling long days, or building a better in-season food plan, check out my nutrition plans. The hunters who are ready in September are the ones who start tightening their plan right now. So go to backboneunlimited.com, choose the path that fits where you are, and I'll help you get started. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you in the comments. You know I read and respond to all of them. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.